the paperwork needed to complete your RMA for the request of mortgage assistance. This form can be found by logging into your bank, and when I talk about your bank, I make it a broad term because all banks have a way to go online and check for these necessary documents, and each bank works a little bit different, but they all have this application, if you will, which is a request for mortgage assistance. It is a 4 to 5 part paperwork that I have gotten one from a lender, so we can go through it together, and I will be making a similar video in Spanish for translation of all of these that I'm talking about to help the Hispanic community as well, since I work for in English and in Spanish. I would really like to make a video in Spanish of what I'm doing here today. So let's get started. Part 1, step 1 of your RMA. It is very simple to complete. Basically, you've put in your name, last name. Some RMAs want to have you write the entire Social Security. Some ask for just the last 4 digits. This is to verify you. Once they get the paperwork, they can see that the mortgage they have is under the Social Security that the paperwork is coming in. Date of birth, address, email, way to contact you. So this information, step 1, is who you are. How can they get a hold of you, and how they can communicate. They'll require your email and a good phone number for them to call you back. Step 1 complete. Step 2 is a hardship. So what a hardship is the situation that we're going through. COVID-19, for example, is a broad term. Even though we know what it is, we know what it's doing, and the hard times that we're going through associated with it. It is not specific enough. You could include it as the title of the hardship, but you do need to let the bank know that you have either lost your job, you are collecting unemployment, you are on some type of government assistance, any sort of information that you can write on the application, the RMA that we have. Is very little space to write it on, but they do say that if it's too short of a space, to use an additional piece of paper. So you can handwrite your hardship, say, I have lost my job, I've been collecting unemployment, I've been unable to make my payment due to COVID-19. It looks like this is going to be a short-term situation. That's also a box that you need to fill in, that this is temporarily. It is not long-term. Long-term would be for somebody that fell, somebody got hurt, they're collecting disability because of an employment or loss of employment due to a disability. This is a little bit different. This is what we're doing during the COVID-19 crisis. So this to cover the loss of income due to a job loss based on a COVID-19 is temporarily. We'll return back to work after the 90 days. This will, let the bank know COVID-19, loss of employment, we'll get back to work. This is how much I'm making now. That's part 2 of the form, and we have already completed page 1. Page 2 most bank forms include the question whether you want to keep your home or you want to sell the home. The first part of this whole process of forbearance, of not being able to pay, on wanting to keep the home because it's just a short-term situation, we want to keep the home. In this case, they want to know how much are you making on a monthly basis, your wages. You need to let them know your income situation. If you're collecting a check still, either from a Social Security or a disability or unemployment. If you are receiving some type of income from your employer, this is where you will put that in and let them know how much you're making. It's very important to know that once this paperwork is in, they do want to see you back at work or making some type of income so they can do an estimate of how much of an interest rate they'll have to drop, how long of a term they need to increase in order for you to make a monthly payment that you can afford. This will come into play once the forbearance order has been lifted. Most banks will want to review your income. If it has changed at a later day, you can make a phone call and say, my income has increased, I am back at work, this is how much I'm making. Your bank is able to take your information over the phone. This information is free of charge. Your bank does not charge for this, and one of the reasons I'm making this video is to hopefully bring some awareness together with the information on how to fill this out, but to be careful with people wanting to charge for something that is completely free of charge. Step 3 concludes with the information about your expenses. So we talked about your income. That is one section of part 3. And the next section of part 3 is your expenses. So we know about the income part. We now need to know about your expenses. What are your expenses? Well, I pay for food, I pay for electricity, I pay for gas, I pay car payment, life insurance, clothing, medical, whatever expenses you have, you need to total them. Say your expenses are $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in expenses. Your income has a decline to $1,000, to $2,000, to $3,000. So what we want to see is some type of balance where your income matches your expenses. Basically even Steven, what comes in goes out. So during this crisis, what we can say is, okay, my income has declined to a point where my expenses are still the same, but now my income has decreased. This is temporarily. So eventually the bank wants to see, okay, if we tweak the interest, tweak the years, can we bring that payment to where now we're back to even? So that's what the bank wants to do. They want to help you. This RMA lets them know what's the situation and is filled out honestly and is filled out by you, the homeowner, and you're working directly with the bank at no charge. There are people that charge for this, and you have to be careful who they are and what their motives are. Attorneys are a good way to seek legal counsel. To fill this out is also legal, and the use of an attorney is highly recommended. Attorneys charge for this free process, and it does is good to use their legal advice. And that brings me to page 4, and that is your signature on this form. The information that you put on this paperwork is legal binding. So they want you to sign and saying the information that I have put down is honest, is real, and here's my signature. So there we have it. The RMA, very simple, 2-3 pages, mainly of information, hardship of your situation, income information, together with expenses, and then your signature on the last page saying this is legal and I have filled this out to the best of my ability with an honest view of my situation.